They dragged the blind prophetess to the execution stone because she had seen the Alpha King die before dawn. The stone had tasted royal blood before. It stood in the center of the moon court, black as winter water, polished by centuries of knees, wrists, and throats pressed against it. Around it, the nobles of Verhold gathered in silver cloaks and wolf fur collars, watching with the clean hunger of people who called cruelty sacred when it happened beneath moonlight. Tonight, they had brought Selene Vale to the stone, Blin, barefoot, chained. Her white hair fell loose around her face, almost glowing beneath the cold moon. A strip of black silk covered her eyes, though everyone knew she had not truly seen with them since childhood. Her hands were bound with prophecy iron, a metal used only for seers accused of speaking against the crown. The court called her curse-mouthed. The temple called her dangerous. The Queen Mother called her necessary to kill. And Alpha King Dorian Vare, the man Selene had warned, watched from his black throne without looking away. That hurt Selene more than the chains. She had never expected mercy from nobles. Their fear of her had been sharpened over years. When she was 7, she spoke of a bridge collapsing before it did. They called it evil. When she was 12, she warned a noble child not to drink from a silver cup. The child's father drank instead and died before dawn. They called it murder. When she was 17, she told a war captain his wolf would not return from the northern pass. The wolf came back alone with blood on its muzzle. After that, no one asked what she saw. They only asked who should silence her. But Dorian had once listened. Not kindly. Never kindly. The Alpha King was not a gentleman. He was young for a ruler. But war and crown had carved him into something cold and controlled. His dark hair was cut roughly at his jaw, his face sharp and beautiful, in a way that made fear feel almost like worship, and his eyes were pale, gray, wolf-bright, and impossible to read. Behind him, his royal wolf shadow stood half-formed. That was the first truth no one in the court wanted named. The king's wolf was dying. Not quickly, not dramatically, but piece by piece, moon by moon. The great black beast behind him had thinned, until its ribs showed through shadow. Nobles whispered that the royal bloodline was weakening. Priests whispered that forbidden prophecy had cursed him. Queen Mother Ismeria whispered nothing at all. She sat beside the throne in a gown of dark silver, still beautiful in the ruthless way winter was beautiful before it killed the crops. Her crown was smaller than Dorian's but older, set with moonstones that had belonged to dead queens. Her hands rested calmly in her lap. Selene could not see her. She could feel her, like a blade wrapped in silk. Lord High Priest Odrin lifted his staff. Selene Vale, blind prophetess of the lower temple, you stand accused of cursing the royal bloodline, speaking false death over the Alpha King, and poisoning the faith of the court. Selene's lips were cracked from 3 days without water. Still, she lifted her head. I did not curse him. A murmur moved through the nobles. Odrin's mouth tightened. You spoke that the king would not survive the next dawn. I spoke what I heard. Queen Mother Ismeria's voice floated from the throne steps, soft and cruel. Death always sounds eager in the mouth of a girl who profits from fear. Selene turned her covered eyes toward the Queen Mother. For one breath, the moon court stilled. Even blindfolded, Selene knew exactly where Ismeria sat. I have never profited from fear, Selene said. I have survived it. Dorian's fingers tightened on the arm of his throne. Small movement, but Selene heard the leather creak. Odrin struck his staff against the stone. The accused continues to twist words. Proceed. 2 guards forced Selene to her knees. The execution stone was cold beneath her skin. A silver blade touched the back of her neck. The court leaned forward. Selene did not pray. Prayer had always felt strange to her. The moon had given her visions, but never protection. It had shown her deaths she could not stop. Secrets no one believed. Blood before it spilled. It had taken her sight and given her truth in return. A poor trade, most days. The executioner gripped her hair and bent her head over the stone. Final words? Odrin asked. Selene listened. Not to the court, not to the wolves, to the blade. Every death had a sound before it happened. A thin silver ringing, like a thread pulled tight between this breath and the next. Usually, when a blade touched skin, Selene heard the victim's ending. But tonight, When the silver kissed her neck, she did not hear her own death. She heard Dorian's, a cup falling, a wolf choking, a mother whispering, "Forgive me, my son." Selene's breath stopped. The vision opened violently. Dorian in his private chamber before dawn. Moonlight on his bare throat. His royal wolf shadow collapsed beside him, black blood leaking from its mouth. A silver cup in his hand. Queen Mother Ismeria standing behind him, weeping without tears. Not grief. Performance. Selene's bound hands clenched. The executioner pressed the blade harder. Blood warmed the back of her neck. Dorian's voice cut through the court. "Speak." The word came before Odrin could stop it. Selene lifted her head as far as the executioner allowed. "She will murder you before dawn." The court froze. Odrin's face blanched. "Silence her." Dorian rose. The royal wolf shadow behind him lifted its weak head. Selene turned toward the throne steps. Her blindfold was soaked with sweat. Her throat shook, but her voice carried. "Not an enemy, Alpha. Not a rebel priest. Not me." The blade trembled against her neck. Selene spoke the name. Queen Mother Ismeria Vare. For one impossible heartbeat, no one moved. Then every royal wolf in the moon court turned its head toward the Queen Mother. Not the human guards. Not the nobles. The wolves. Black royal wolves carved from generations of blood, seated beside throne guards and noble heirs, all raised their muzzles at once. Their silver eyes fixed on Ismeria. Dorian stared at his mother. Ismeria did not flinch. That was the second truth. An innocent woman would have shown shock. Queen Mother Ismeria only looked disappointed. Then Dorian's dying wolf shadow stood fully for the first time in months and growled at the woman who had given him life. Dorian's dying wolf shadow stood fully for the first time in months and growled at the woman who had given him life. The sound moved through the moon court like a crack in a frozen lake. Every noble froze. Every priest forgot his prayer. Queen Mother Ismeria sat beside the black throne with her hands still folded, her silver gown falling perfectly around her feet, her moonstone crown catching the light as if the entire court had not just turned its wolves toward her. Only her eyes changed. They moved from Selene to Dorian. Not frightened. Measuring. That frightened Selene more than denial would have. The executioner still held the blade against Selene's neck. Warm blood slid beneath the edge and ran into the collar of her thin temple dress. She could feel the man's hand shaking. The scent of fear gathered around him like wet iron. Dorian descended one step from the throne. "Remove the blade." No one moved. The executioner looked toward High Priest Odrin. That single glance told the court more than a confession. Dorian's voice dropped. "I said remove it." The royal wolf shadow behind him growled again. And this time the executioner stumbled back so quickly the blade scraped Selene's skin. She clenched her teeth but did not cry out. 2 guards reached for her chains. Dorian lifted one hand. "Do not touch her unless she permits it." The court stared. Selene went still. No one had ever asked permission from the girl they intended to execute. Dorian stopped 3 steps from the execution stone. Selene Vale. Her name in his voice was dangerous. Cold. Controlled. But not careless. "Yes. Do you want the chains removed?" The question struck harder than the blade. Selene could have laughed if her throat had not been so tight. They had dragged her from the lower temple, starved her, blindfolded her, chained her, forced her to kneel, and only now after death had named the Queen Mother, someone asked what she wanted. "Yes," she said. Dorian looked at the nearest guard. "Keys." High Priest Odrin stepped forward, his staff striking the floor. "Your Majesty, this is unwise. The accused has just spoken treason at the execution stone." Dorian did not look at him. "No. She spoke prophecy. She named your mother as your killer, and every royal wolf heard truth." Odrin's mouth tightened. "Wolves can be misled by cursed sight." Selene turned her covered eyes toward him. "Then why are you afraid to let me speak again?" The court murmured. The guard unlocked her chains. Prophecy iron fell from her wrists with a heavy sound. Selene swallowed as blood returned to her fingers in bright needles of pain. Dorian watched her hands. Not hair blindful, her hands. As if he noticed the small tremor she could not stop. Queen Mother Ismeria finally rose. The court bowed from instinct. Dorian did not. My son, she said softly. Grief makes wolves restless. You have been ill. Your beast is weakened. Now a condemned prophetess speaks poison at the edge of death, and you let the court turn on your own blood? Selene listened beneath the words. Every lie had a shape. Ismeria's lie did not shake. It had been practiced too long. Dorian looked at his mother. Will you drink from my dawn cup before me? The moon court went utterly silent. For the first time, Ismeria's breath changed. Only once, but Selene heard it. Ismeria smiled faintly. If that will comfort your fear, yes. Selene's stomach tightened. No, she said. Dorian turned to her. Selene pushed herself upright beside the execution stone. Her knees were weak, but she stood. Blood cooled at the back of her neck. The blindfold still covered her eyes, yet she could feel every gaze in the court like knives pointed at her skin. She will not refuse the cup, Selene said. The poison is not in the wine. Ismeria's smile faded. Dorian took one step closer. Where is it? Selene listened inward. The vision came in fragments. A silver cup, black moonlight, a royal wolf licking blood from its own teeth, Dorian gripping his throat, Ismeria's hand at his shoulder, not holding him up but keeping him still. Then another image. A ring. Queen Mother Ismeria's ring, carved from old moonbone. Pressing against the rim of the cup. The poison is in her ring, Selene said. It wakes only when it touches royal blood. Several nobles gasped. Ismeria's hand closed. Dorian saw it. So did every wolf. His wolf shadow moved down the throne steps, weak but furious, ribs visible through darkness. It stopped between Dorian and Ismeria, its silver eyes fixed on the Queen Mother's hand. Show the ring, Dorian said. Ismeria's expression hardened. You would humiliate me before wolves and servants? I would live before dawn. For one moment, mother and son faced each other across the court. Then Odrin shouted, Seize the prophetess! Temple guards moved. Dorian's sword left its sheath. The sound was clean and final. The royal wolves lunged not at Selene, not at Dorian, but at the temple guards. They did not tear throats. They drove them back, snarling. Silver eyes bright with ancient law. Selene felt the moon court shift. This was no longer an execution. It was becoming a trial. And trials were dangerous to people who controlled executions. Ismeria turned toward the nobles. You see what she does? She turns wolves against priests, son against mother, crown against blood. This is why seers were once blinded before they could speak. Selena lifted one hand to her blindfold. Dorian saw the movement. Who blinded you? The question was quiet. Too quiet. Selene's fingers paused against the black silk. No one in the court breathed. She had never spoken of that night. Not fully. The lower temple said she was born blind because prophecy demanded sacrifice. The priest said the moon took her sight to open her inner vision. Nobles loved that version. It made her suffering feel sacred instead of political. Selene pulled the blindfold down. The court recoiled. Her eyes were pale silver, clouded and scarred, marked by thin black lines like cracks in moonstone. Not empty, not weak, ruined by human hands. She faced the throne steps. I was not born blind, she said. I saw the Queen Mother place a black thread charm beneath the king's cradle when he was 7. I told the temple. That night, High Priest Odrin held me down while a woman wearing moonbone rings burned my sight away. Odrin went white. Dorian's face changed. Note shock. Something colder, Selene continued. They did not blind me so I could see prophecy. They blinded me because I had already seen treason. Ismeria's voice cut like ice. Lies. Selene smiled faintly. It was not a happy thing. No, she said. Death. Truth. The execution stone beneath her hand began to glow. Black first, then silver. The blood from her neck ran down the stone and into old carved channels no one had noticed before. The moon court floor answered. Hidden runes appeared beneath centuries of polish, circling the throne, the priest's dais, and the Queen Mother's seat. Dorian looked down. What is this? Selene heard the stone speak. Not in words. In memory. This is not only an execution stone, she said. It is a witness stone. The court erupted. Odrin stumbled backward. Ismeria's hand closed tighter around her ring. Dorian's wolf shadow lifted its head fully now, as if old law had breathed strength into it. The stone showed its first memory. A little girl held down beneath temple moonfire. A priest's hands. A woman's ring. A child screaming as silver sight burned black. Then the woman lifted her face in the vision. Queen Mother Ismeria. The court saw. Dorian saw. Selene stood beside the glowing stone, blind eyes uncovered, blood at her neck, and did not look away from the woman who had stolen her sight. The Alpha King's voice became deadly soft. Mother, Dorian said. Show me your hand. Queen Mother Ismeria did not move. The moon court held its breath around her. The royal wolves remained fixed on the silver ring clenched beneath her fingers. Dorian stood halfway between the throne and the execution stone, sword in hand, his dying wolf shadow beside him with its teeth bared. Selene stood near the black stone, blind eyes uncovered, blood cooling on her neck. The ruined silver of her gaze turned toward the woman who had stolen her sight. High Priest Odrin tried to speak. Your Majesty, Dorian did not look away from Ismeria. If you defend her before she opens her hand, I will know you fear what she carries. Odrin closed his mouth. Ismeria smiled, but this time the smile was thinner. You would let a condemned seer command your court? No, Dorian said. I would let truth command it. The execution stone pulsed beneath Selene's palm. She heard something inside it shift. Old blood. Old names. Old deaths, waiting to be remembered. Ismeria lifted her hand at last. The ring sat on her finger, pale and delicate, carved from moonbone, set with a black stone so small most eyes would have missed it. But the wolves saw. Every royal wolf in the court snarled at once. Dorian's face hardened. Remove it. Ismeria's eyes chilled. This ring belonged to your grandmother. Selene spoke quietly. No. It belonged to the first queen who poisoned her own mate and called it succession. The court recoiled. Ismeria turned her head slowly toward Selene. Careful, girl. Selene's lips curved without warmth. You taught me caution with fire. Dorian stepped closer to his mother. Remove the ring. For the first time, Ismeria looked at her son not as a mother, but as a ruler measuring a rival. Then she pulled the ring from her finger and threw it onto the court floor. It struck the stone once. The black gem cracked. A dark thread of smoke rose from it, twisting like a tiny serpent toward Dorian's wolf shadow. His wolf staggered. Dorian sucked in a sharp breath, one hand going to his chest. Selene heard the death thread wake. Not poison for a cup, poison for a bond. Do not let it touch his wolf, she said. The smoke moved faster. Dorian swung his sword, but the blade passed through it. His wolf shadow snarled and tried to retreat, yet the black thread followed like it knew the shape of his weakness. Selene moved before fear could stop her. She stepped between the thread and the king's wolf. The court gasped. The smoke struck her instead. Cold ripped through her body. She dropped to one knee, gripping the execution stone to keep from falling. The black thread crawled across her wrist like ink under skin, searching for a royal bond and finding none. No, not none. Something hidden in her blood answered. The execution stone flared silver. Dorian lunged toward her. Selene. She raised a hand. Do not touch me. He stopped immediately. The black thread twisted inside her wrist. Confused. Angry. Unable to feed the way it had been made to feed. Selene heard its memory. Royal cups, dead kings, weakened wolves, mothers placing grief veils over murder, priests writing fever into records. This was never meant for one dawn, she whispered. Dorian's voice was low. What do you hear? Selene forced herself to breathe through the pain. Generations. Kings dying before their wolves could challenge the queen line. Sons weakened. Fathers poisoned. Prophecies forged afterward. Odrin backed away. Too late. The execution stone sent a ring of silver light across the moon court floor, trapping him inside the same circle as Ismeria. Dorian looked at Odrin. You wrote the false prophecies. The priest trembled. The Queen Mother protected the bloodline. Ismeria's voice snapped. Silence. But the stone had already heard him. A vision rose. A younger Dorian, 7 years old, asleep in a moonlit chamber. His wolf shadow curled beside the bed, small but strong. Ismeria entered with Odrin. She placed the moonbone ring beneath the child's pillow. Black thread slipped from the ring into the pup shadow's mouth. Then another vision. A little Selene, not blind yet, standing in the corridor, seeing everything. Another. Odrin holding the child down. Ismeria pressing burning moonbone close to Selene's eyes. Dorian watched the memory without moving. That was worse than rage. His stillness had become lethal. When the vision faded, his wolf shadow stood taller. Still wounded, still thin, but no longer confused. It knew its enemy. Ismeria lifted her chin. I did what every queen before me did. Dorian's voice came like ice. You poisoned my wolf. I preserved your throne. You blinded a child. I protected a kingdom from prophecy. Selene laughed once weakly. No. You protected yourself from being seen. The black thread inside her wrist burned hotter. Dorian took one step toward her, then stopped again. How do we remove it? Selene listened. The ring was broken, but the curse was still alive. It had entered her because she stood between it and the king. If she let it stay, it would burrow into her sight blood and silence her before dawn. If it returned to Dorian, it would finish what Ismeria had begun. The execution stone answered beneath her hand. Witness must be fed truth before poison loses hunger. Selene looked toward Ismeria. She must name every king she helped kill. Ismeria's expression turned flat. No. Dorian raised his sword. Yes. Selene shook her head. Not by threat. By witness. Dorian looked at her. She was shaking now. Pain climbed her arm. Darkness pressed behind her ruined eyes. Deeper than blindness. Colder than death. Still, she stood. You wanted me dead because I could name one murder, Selene said to Ismeria. Now you will name all of them. The execution stone split open. Inside it lay carved names, layered one beneath another. Dead kings. Dead heirs. Dead wolves. Dead seers who had spoken too soon. The court stared as the floor around the throne lit with hidden records. Dorian's father. His grandfather. 2 uncles. A brother who had supposedly been born breathless. Selene felt Dorian's control crack beside her. But he did not strike. That mattered. Ismeria looked at the names and, for the first time, true fear entered her face. Not fear of death. Fear of being recorded. The royal wolves formed a circle around her. Dorian spoke softly. Begin, Dorian said. Queen Mother Ismeria stood inside the circle of royal wolves, her moonstone gown shining like frost beneath the court lights. For the first time that night, she looked less like a queen and more like a woman measuring the distance between power and exposure. Selene stood beside the execution stone, one hand pressed to the black surface, the other wrist darkened by the poison thread she had taken into herself. The curse crawled beneath her skin, cold and hungry, but the stone held it in place. It would not release her until truth fed it. High Priest Odrin knelt near the priest's dais, trapped by the same witness circle. His face had turned the color of ash. The court waited. Ismeria lifted her chin. I will not confess to crimes invented by a blind girl and a wounded stone. The execution stone answered. A name burned into the floor. King Valor Vare, Dorian's father. The court gasped. Selene heard the name like a bell struck beneath water. A vision rose from the stone. King Valor in his private chamber, older but still strong, his wolf, shadow, restless beside him. Ismeria stood behind him with a cup in her hand. Not wine. Medicine. She pressed her moonbone ring to its rim before offering it. Valor drank. His wolf collapsed first. Then the king. The official record appeared beside the vision in cold silver letters. Fever of the blood. Dorian did not move. But his wolf shadow let out a sound so low the stone beneath the throne cracked. Ismeria's face remained still. Your father was weak. He would have surrendered border law to the old wolf houses. Dorian's voice was quiet. So you murdered him. I preserved your inheritance. Selene spoke through clenched teeth. The stone does not accept prettier words for blood. Another name burned. Prince Meron, Dorian's elder brother. This time the court broke into frightened whispers. Most believed Meron had died as an infant, breathless before his first moon. The vision showed otherwise. A cradle. A newborn wolf shadow curled beside a sleeping child. Strong. Too strong. Ismeria, younger then, standing over the cradle while Odrin held a silver thread dipped in black moon poison. The thread touched the pup shadow. The infant stopped breathing. Dorian's sword lowered toward the floor. His hand trembled once. Only once. Selene heard it, leather tightening over the hilt, grief becoming violence. She turned her face toward him. Not yet, she said. Dorian's jaw clenched. She killed my brother. Yes. She killed my father. Yes. And you want her alive? I want her named. The words held him back better than chains. Ismeria looked at Selene with hatred now. You speak like a judge. No, Selene said. I speak like the child you blinded because I saw too early. The poison thread in her wrist burned hotter. It wanted Ismeria's denial. It fed on hidden death. Selene pressed her palm harder into the execution stone. More, she whispered. Names spread outward. King Orin, Prince Savel, Heir Corvin, Seer Malra, Seer Yisolda, Seer Bren. Not only kings, sayers. Selene's breath caught. The stone showed them one by one. Blindfolded women, old men with clouded eyes, children with moon-pale pupils, all dragged to the same execution stone after speaking death. Truth against the queen line. Some were killed, some were blinded. Some disappeared into temple cells beneath Odrin's hand. Selene understood then. She had never been the first. She had only been the one who survived long enough to speak at the right throat. Dorian turned toward Odrin. How many? The priest shook. The queen line required silence. Dorian stepped closer. How many? Odrin's voice broke. 27 recorded. More before my service. The court recoiled. Selene felt the number cut through her. 27. 27 people who had carried truth in their mouths and been punished for letting it live. The execution stone split wider. Beneath the carved names lay a hollow chamber filled with small objects. Burned blindfolds, broken prophet beads, wolf teeth, locks of hair, tiny scrolls wrapped in black thread. Evidence. Ismeria tried to step backward. The royal wolves blocked her. Dorian looked at his mother, and whatever son still stood in him seemed to die quietly. Why? He asked. For the first time, the question was not command. It was grief. Ismeria looked at him then, and her face changed. Not softened. Never that. But something old and bitter surfaced beneath the silver mask. Because the Vare bloodline does not survive uncontrolled wolves, she said. Your father would have let the royal beast choose its own mate, its own heir, its own law. Your brother's wolf was stronger than yours. The seers saw it. They saw queens losing the throne to wolves, to mates, to prophecy, to girls with moonsight who had no court blood. I did what every queen before me was too weak to finish. Dorian's voice was flat. You chose the throne over your children. I chose the throne for my children. Selene shook her head. No. You chose a throne that needed your children dead or weakened to remain yours. The words struck. Ismeria's expression cracked. Only for a heartbeat, but the stone saw it. A final name burned across the floor. Dorian Vare. Not dead yet. Marked. The poison thread inside Selene surged toward Dorian. The moonbone ring had not only been prepared for dawn, it had already marked him, slowly feeding on his wolf for years. The final death was only the closing of a wound opened long ago. Dorian's wolf shadow staggered. Selene reached toward the thread in her wrist, but the poison tightened. It had enough truth now. It wanted the king. Ismeria smiled through pale lips. Even if you expose me, he dies. The death thread already knows his blood. Dorian stumbled, one hand to his chest. The court erupted. Selene heard dawn approaching before anyone saw light. The first pale breath of morning pressed against the high windows. Her original prophecy sharpened. Before dawn, they had only moments. Selene placed both hands on the execution stone, then changed the witness. Dorian forced himself upright. What does that mean? The poison knows royal blood, she said. But it feeds through hidden death. If you keep the throne built on her murders, it reaches you. Dorian looked at the black throne behind him. The throne of his fathers. His crown. His bloodline. His wolf. Ismeria saw the choice forming and lunged forward. Do not. The royal wolves snarled, holding her back. Selene's voice shook. Dorian. The throne is the path. His eyes met hers. For the first time, the cold Alpha King looked afraid. Not of dying. Of what surviving would cost. Then he turned, walked to the black throne, and drove his sword into its heart. The court screamed. The throne cracked from seat to crown. Black moonlight burst out, carrying every hidden death recorded beneath it. The poison thread tore from Selene's wrist and shot toward the broken throne instead of Dorian's wolf. His wolf shadow collapsed, then rose, stronger. The death thread burned inside the throne's crack and vanished. Dawn broke across the moon court. Dorian lived. Selene fell. This time, he caught her, because she reached for him first. Behind them, Queen Mother Ismeria stared at the ruined throne with a face emptied of victory, and every royal wolf turned its back on her. Every royal wolf turned its back on Queen Mother Ismeria. The moon court understood the meaning before any priest could soften it. A royal wolf did not turn from blood lightly. Not from crown blood. Not from birth blood. Not from the woman who had carried the Alpha King in her body and trained half the court to bow before her. But one by one, the wolves lowered their heads away from Ismeria and faced the broken throne instead, as if the ruin of black stone now held more honor than the Queen Mother herself. Dorian stood in the wreckage of his own inheritance with Selene in his arms. The black throne had split from seat to crown. Smoke rose from the crack, where the death thread had burned itself out. The first light of dawn entered the high windows and touched Dorian's wolf shadow. No longer thin enough to vanish. It was still wounded, still marked by years of poison. But it stood, alive. Selene's body trembled against him. Her wrist was blackened where the poison had passed through her. Blood had dried at the back of her neck. Her ruined silver eyes were half open, though she could not see the dawn that had saved him. Dorian looked down at her. You took the death thread. Selene's voice was weak. It was aiming for your wolf. You should have let it. She almost laughed. You are welcome. His mouth tightened, but there was no anger in it. Only fear he had no practice showing. The court began to stir. Nobles whispered behind jeweled hands. Priests gathered broken dignity around themselves like torn robes. High Priest Odrin remained on his knees, trapped inside the witness circle, his face gray with terror. Ismeria stood alone. No wolves beside her. No throne behind her. No sun moving toward her. Still, she lifted her chin. You have made yourself crownless before enemies, she said. You shattered the throne to save a blind girl who accused your mother. Dorian looked at the broken throne, then at Selene. No. I shattered a murder path. You shattered royal continuity. I shattered a grave wearing a crown. The execution stone flared at his words. Selene is still. Dorian lowered her carefully beside the stone, not letting go until her hand found the edge and steadied. She breathed once, twice, then forced herself upright. Pain moved through her like winter water, but she refused to collapse before Ismeria. Not now. Not after surviving the blade. Not after surviving the truth. Dorian turned toward the guards. Bind the Queen Mother. No one moved. The old fear still held them. Ismeria saw it and smiled faintly. Selene heard that smile in the silence. Dorian's wolf shadow stepped forward. The guards dropped to one knee. Notto Ismeria. To the king's living wolf. Then Captain Vale, the oldest of the royal guard, rose and crossed the court. He removed his cloak, wrapped it around his hand, and took Ismeria's wrists. For the first time, the Queen Mother resisted. You dare? Vale's voice shook, but he held firm. I served King Valor. I carried Prince Meron's funeral shield. I stood guard outside the nursery the night he died. Ismeria's face hardened. Veil locked iron around her wrists. I should have asked why an infant's wolf went silent before his body did. The court felt the blow. Not shouted. Worse. Remembered. Dorian looked to Odrin. Bind him too. The temple guards hesitated. The royal wolves turned their heads. The temple guards obeyed. Odrin began to weep as prophecy iron closed around his hands. Selene listened to the sound and felt no joy. Only exhaustion. Revenge in stories was supposed to taste like fire. In truth, it tasted like blood, ash, and the knowledge that being right did not return what had been taken. Her sight would not come back because Ismeria wore chains. The seers beneath the stone would not wake. Dorian's father and brother would not rise from their hidden deaths. But the lie had stopped breathing freely. That had to matter. Dorian faced the court. The moon court will not disperse. A noble lord stepped forward carefully. Your Majesty, the throne is broken. We must secure succession, seal the records, calm the border pacts. No records will be sealed. The noble went still. Dorian's voice carried through the hall. Every name beneath the execution stone will be copied. Every death marked fever, weakness, or blood curse will be reopened. Every seer punished under false prophecy will be named. Every priest who touched this rite will stand witness. Ismeria gave a cold laugh. You will turn the kingdom against its own history. Selene answered before Dorian could. No, she said. Against its lies. Dorian looked at her. The court did too. Selene pressed her burned wrist against the execution stone. There are more chambers beneath this one. Odrin made a strangled sound. Dorian turned slowly toward him. What chambers? Selene listened deeper. The stone beneath her palm was awake now. Not fully, but enough. It no longer whispered only deaths. It whispered places. Steps below the priest's dais. A locked archive behind moon veils. Blindfolds stored as sacred relics. Seer bones hidden under prayer bells. The lower prophecy vault, she said. Where they kept the visions they did not want fulfilled. Dorian's face darkened. Open it. Ismeria's composure cracked. You do not know what is down there. Selene turned her blind eyes toward her. That is why you fear it. The priest's dais split with a sound like ice breaking. Stone steps descended into darkness. No one moved. Then Dorian held out one hand toward Selene, palm open, not touching. You do not have to go below. She could hear the lie he was trying not to tell. He wanted her away from danger. He wanted her resting. He wanted to command it, and did not. Good. Selene placed her fingers lightly against his palm. I know, she said. I am going. Together they descended. The lower prophecy vault smelled of dust, old blood, and extinguished candles. Shelves lined the walls, stacked with black scrolls, sealed bones, silver bowls, cracked moon mirrors, and hundreds of folded blindfolds marked with names. Selene stopped at the first shelf. Her fingers touched a blindfold. A vision opened. A boy seer dragged screaming from his bed after warning that King Valor would be murdered. A woman prophetess drowned in a moon basin after naming Ismeria's grandmother. A blind elder starved beneath the temple after refusing to alter a death record. Selene pulled her hand away, shaking. Dorian stood beside her in silence, but his wolf shadow pressed low to the ground, mourning. At the center of the vault was a black mirror covered by a silver cloth. Selene did not need sight to know it was waiting. What is that? Dorian asked. Odrin, dragged behind them in chains, whispered. The unspoken dawn. Selene's breath caught. Dorian looked at her. Do you know it? All seers know the name, she said. It is the prophecy that never lies because no one speaks it aloud and lives unchanged. Ismeria's voice came from the stairs, cold and urgent. Do not uncover it. Dorian reached for the cloth. Selene stopped him. Not with force. With her hand over his. This one, she said. I must touch first. Why? Because it is not about your death anymore. She felt the mirror calling not to Dorian, but to the burned places behind her eyes. Selene pulled the cloth away. The vault filled with white moonlight. Though she was blind, she saw. Not with eyes. With the wound where sight had been stolen. The mirror showed Selene as a child before the burning. It showed her watching Ismeria hide the black thread charm beneath Dorian's cradle. It showed the girl screaming as her sight was taken. Then it showed something no stone had revealed yet. A woman in a silver cloak, taking the child's blood afterward. Not Ismeria. Another priestess. She pressed Selene's blood into a moon bowl and whispered, "The last death-seer line still lives. Selene Noctara." Dorian caught her only when her hand tightened around his. "The last what?" he asked. Selene's voice barely came. "Death-seer." The mirror brightened. Behind Selene's reflection rose countless blindfolded figures, all with silver eyes, all standing in a line that stretched back into ancient moonlight. Not cursed prophetesses, not temple mistakes. A bloodline. Ismeria's final secret had not been that Selene saw too much. It was that Selene came from the only seer line able to name murder before it became history. The mirror spoke in a voice only truth could carry. When the last death-seer names the queen of hidden graves, the throne must choose bloodline or witness. Dorian looked from the mirror to his mother. Ismeria stood at the foot of the stairs, chained but still upright. Selene understood the choice before he said it. If Dorian chose bloodline, Ismeria's crimes could be buried to preserve royal stability. If he chose witness, the Queen Mother would stand trial before the same court she had used for executions. Dorian's wolf shadow rose behind him. The king looked at Selene, then at the mirror, then at the chained woman who had given him life and fed death into his blood. His voice was clear. "Witness." Dorian's choice struck the lower prophecy vault like a bell. The black mirror flared white. For one breath, Selene thought the light would tear her open. It entered the ruined places behind her eyes, not healing them, not pretending pain had never happened, but filling the wound with memory. She saw the vault as no sighted person could. Every hidden scroll pulsing with buried truth, every blindfold carrying the last breath of a murdered seer, every silver bowl stained with prophecy blood. Then she saw Queen Mother Ismeria's shadow. It was not one shadow. It was a corridor of graves. Dorian saw it too. His wolf shadow rose behind him, no longer thin, no longer confused. Black and silver light moved through its ribs as the old poison burned away. It stood beside the Alpha King like a beast remembering its own name. Ismeria looked at her son with cold disbelief. "You would choose a blind girl's bloodline over your mother?" Dorian's answer was quiet. "I choose the dead you buried," the mirror answered. The lower vault opened its records at once. Blindfolds lifted from the shelves and floated through the air, each one burning with a name. Seers, children, temple girls, old prophetesses, servants who had seen too much, wolf healers who had heard royal death before it came. One by one, their names circled Selene. Malra, Yolde, Bren, Kaelia, Oren, Vessa, Nirel, Thorn. Selene's throat tightened. She had thought herself alone for so long that the company of the dead nearly broke her. The mirror showed the final hidden truth. The death-seer line had once served the throne openly. Not as servants, not as cursed mouths. As witnesses. They stood beside kings during succession, not to choose rulers, but to name murder before it could become law. When the queen line began poisoning wolves and rewriting deaths, the death-seers became the only bloodline able to expose them. So the court blinded them, then called blindness sacred. Selene's hands shook. Dorian saw. He stepped closer but still did not touch. "What does the mirror need?" Selene listened to the light. "It needs the first false prophecy broken." Odrin made a sound of terror. Dorian turned to him. "Which one?" The priest shook his head. The mirror answered for him. A scroll flew from the highest shelf and opened in midair. Its black seal cracked. Silver letters appeared across the parchment. "The royal wolf will die if a death-seer stands beside the throne." The sentence had justified generations of executions. Selene felt rage move through her so cleanly it almost steadied her. "That was the first lie," she said. Ismeria lifted her chin. "It was necessary." "No," Selene said. "It was convenient." The mirror showed the true prophecy beneath the false one. "The royal wolf will die if no death-seer stands beside the throne." The vault went silent. Dorian looked at Selene. The meaning settled over both of them. His wolf had not been dying because Selene cursed him. It had been dying because her bloodline had been removed from the court, leaving the throne blind to murder, poison, and false succession. Odrin fell forward, pressing his forehead to the stone. "We only copied what the queen line preserved." Dorian's voice turned cold. You burned children's eyes because no one checked the ink. Selene turned toward the first false prophecy. She did not ask for a blade. She placed her blackened wrist against the scroll. The poison thread still trapped in her skin hissed. "Let it eat the lie," she whispered. The blackness crawled from her wrist into the parchment. The false prophecy buckled, twisted, and burned from the inside. As it died, the names around Selene flared brighter. The blindfolds fell. Not to the floor. Into her hands. One after another. Each strip of cloth became a witness mark. Silver white and clean of blood. The wound behind her eyes opened again. This time, Selene did not see death. She saw doors. A chamber beneath the Queen Mother's rooms. A locked cradle archive. A moonbone workshop where rings like Ismeria's had been carved. A hidden nursery record marked with Dorian's brother's name. A sealed wall behind the throne holding the ashes of dead royal wolves. She gasped. Dorian leaned closer. "Selene, there are more records," she said. "Above. In her chambers." The ring was not the only one. Ismeria's face changed. That was enough. Dorian looked to Captain Vale. "Seal the Queen Mother's rooms. No one enters before witness. No priest touches fire. No servant is blamed for what is found." Vale bowed. "Yes, Majesty." Ismeria laughed softly. "You think records will save you? The noble houses will not accept a throne guided by a death-seer. They will call you bewitched, weak, ruled by a blind prophetess." Dorian turned toward her. "Then they will say it in the moon court, before the stone, while every murdered name listens." For the first time, Ismeria had no answer. Selene felt the mirror dim. The trial below was finished for now. The trial above had only begun. Dorian offered his hand again. Selene was too tired to pretend she did not need help. She placed her fingers in his palm. Together they climbed the steps back to the moon court. The court looked different in dawnlight. The broken throne smoked behind them. The execution stone glowed with names. The Queen Mother stood bound beneath the gaze of every royal wolf. Odrin was dragged behind them in prophecy iron. His head bowed. Dorian led Selene to the center of the court. Not behind him, beside him. That simple placement caused more whispers than any speech. He faced the nobles. "The execution is void," he said. "The charge against Selene Vale is void. Every prophecy used to condemn her bloodline will be reopened." A noblewoman stepped forward, pale and shaking. "Your Majesty, if the Queen Mother stands trial, every succession for generations may be questioned." Dorian looked at the shattered throne. "Good." The words silenced the hall. Selene turned her blind face toward him. He continued, "A throne that survives only because murder went unquestioned deserves to be questioned." The execution stone flared. The royal wolves howled once, low and solemn. Dorian looked at Ismeria. "Queen Mother Ismeria Vare will stand before witness at moonrise. Not as my mother, not as royal blood, as the accused." Ismeria's mouth tightened. "And who will speak against me? The blind prophetess?" Selene lifted her head. "No," she said. "All of us." The stone opened beneath her words. From its silver light rose the shadows of the death-seers who had been silenced before her. They stood behind Selene in a long, pale line, blindfolds removed, ruined eyes shining like moons. The court recoiled. Selene did not. For the first time in her life, she did not stand alone with a truth no one wanted. Dorian's wolf shadow lowered its head beside her, not in command. In recognition, and as dawn fully entered the moon court, the dead seers spoke one sentence together. "The Queen of Hidden Graves must be named before the throne can live." The dead seers spoke as one. "The Queen of Hidden Graves must be named before the throne can live." The moon court recoiled. Some nobles crossed themselves in the old wolf sign. Others stepped back from the execution stone as if the dead might reach for them next. The pale line of murdered seers stood behind Selene, their blindfolds gone, their ruined eyes shining with cold moonlight. For the first time in generations, their mouths were not sealed. Queen Mother Ismeria looked at them without bowing. That told Selene everything. The Queen Mother did not fear ghosts. She feared records. Dorian stood beside Selene, his wolf shadow low and alert. The broken throne smoked behind him. The dawn light had strengthened his beast, but not healed it completely. Years of poison could not be undone by one sword stroke. Still, his wolf was standing now, and every royal wolf in the court knew why. The throne had lived because seers died. Selene turned toward Ismeria. The hidden graves. Where are they? Ismeria's expression did not change. You mistake theater for law. One of the dead seers stepped forward. An old woman with silver hair and hollow moonlit eyes. The first grave lies beneath the Queen's garden, she said. The second beneath the nursery chapel. The third beneath the West Tower bells. The rest beneath the roots of the throne hall. The court erupted. Dorian did not shout. He lifted one hand. The royal wolves snarled. Silence returned. Dorian looked at Captain Vale. Send guards. Open the Queen's garden first. Bring witnesses, scribes, and moon lanterns. No priest leads the search. Odrin, still bound in prophecy iron, flinched. Selene heard his guilt like a rat behind a wall. She turned her head toward him. You know the graves. The priest shook his head. I performed rites. I did not dig them. The execution stone flared. Li. The word did not appear in letters. It struck through the court as sound. Odrin collapsed. I marked them, he whispered. I marked the old ones. Not all. Dorian's voice was quiet. How many? Odrin trembled. Enough to keep the queen line clean. Ismeria's eyes sharpened. Weak men confess when frightened by shadows. Selene faced her. Strong women do not need children buried under gardens to keep power. For the first time, a ripple of anger crossed Ismeria's face. Good. Selene was tired of royal calm. Within the hour, the first grave was opened. The Queen's garden had always been praised as the most beautiful place in Verhold. White roses, silver fountains, moonvine arches, soft grass where noble children played beneath their mothers' watchful eyes. At dawn, guards tore the roses out by the roots. Beneath them lay bones, small bones. The court went silent in a way no command could have created. Dorian stood at the edge of the opened earth, face like stone. Selene stood beside him. One hand on the execution stone shard he had ordered carried with them so witness would not be left behind in the court. Captain Vale knelt and lifted a tiny silver bracelet from the grave. A name was engraved inside. Myron, Dorian's elder brother. The infant prince who had supposedly died breathless before his first moon. Dorian did not move. His wolf shadow let out one broken sound. Selene wanted to reach for him. She did not. Not before the court. Not while his grief was being watched by people who had used grief as politics for years. Instead, she spoke to the stone. Name the grave. The shard glowed. A child's memory rose above the soil. A cradle. A wolf pup. Shadow. A silver thread. Ismeria's hand. Odrin's prayer. And the garden earth closing before dawn. The nobles saw. The servants saw. The royal wolves saw. Dorian turned toward his mother. Ismeria stood in chains at the garden path, still upright, still proud. You buried my brother beneath your roses, he said. I buried a succession crisis. The words were so cold, even the wolves stepped back. Dorian's hand went to his sword. Selene's voice stopped him. Not yet. He closed his eyes once. When he opened them, the sun was gone again. The king remained. Open the nursery chapel, he said. The second grave held not one body, but 7. Seers' children. Babies born with moon-pale eyes. Infants recorded as fevered, weak, stillborn, unsuitable. Their blindfolds had been placed over their faces after death, as if the queen line feared even dead eyes. Selene knelt beside the grave. Her breath shook. One of the dead seers behind her fell to her knees without sound. Selene understood then that these were not only political victims, they were families, bloodlines cut before they could speak. She placed both hands on the earth. I name this grave witnessed. Silver light passed through the bones. The names appeared one by one in the air. Kale, Oris, Vanna, Sol, Irith, Marn, Leora. Not forgotten anymore. At the West Tower bells, the third grave revealed adult seers, temple servants, and 2 wolf healers who had tried to protect them. At the roots of the throne hall, the earth opened into a chamber of ashes and royal wolf teeth. Proof that Ismeria had not only murdered human blood but killed royal wolves who resisted her poison. By moonrise, the moon court was no longer a court. It was a burial ground brought into the light. Ismeria was forced to stand before every opened grave. She did not confess from remorse. She confessed because the dead had become too numerous to deny. Yes, she said at last, voice ringing under the rising moon. I ordered the graves. I ordered the blindings. I ordered the poison prepared. I ordered the seer line cut down because prophecy had made queens kneel for too long. Dorian stared at her. You call this strength? I call it survival. Selene stepped forward, pale and exhausted, but steady. No, she said. You call fear survival because fear was the only throne you could keep. The dead seers lifted their heads. The execution stone, carried back to the moon court, blazed silver. Queen Mother Ismeria's shadow stretched across the floor, and inside it appeared every hidden grave, every false record, every ring, every black thread charm, every name she had tried to bury. The court could no longer look away. Dorian faced the nobles. Queen Mother Ismeria Vare is removed from royal authority. Her blood claim is suspended under witness. Every law signed under hidden death will be reviewed. Every seer family is restored to name. Every grave open today will remain open until recorded. A noble lord shouted, You cannot rule without the old throne. Dorian looked at the shattered black seat. Then I will not rule from it. Silence. He turned toward Selene. Not to crown her. Not to claim her. Not to make her pain useful. To rebuild this court, he said. I need witness beside the crown, not beneath it. Selene's ruined eyes faced him. If I stand beside it, she said, I stand free. Yes. If I speak death, you do not punish the mouth for the wound. Yes. If I say your throne is wrong, you listen before you defend it. Dorian's wolf shadow lowered its head. So will he, the king said. The royal wolf gave one solemn growl. Selene let herself breathe. The dead seers behind her began to fade. Not gone, but no longer trapped in silence. Their names remained glowing on the stone. Ismeria watched them vanish with hatred in her eyes. Selene turned toward her. You wanted me dead before dawn. The Queen Mother said nothing. Selene lifted her chin. Dawn has passed. And this time, the whole court heard the prophecy complete. Dawn had passed. Selene Vale was still alive. The words moved through the moon court without being spoken, carried by the faces of nobles who had come to watch a blind prophetess die, and now stood surrounded by opened graves, broken records, and a Queen Mother in chains. Queen Mother Ismeria had wanted Selene silenced before sunrise. Instead, sunrise had exposed her. The execution stone glowed at the center of the court, covered in names that no priest could polish away. Dorian's shattered throne stood behind it, split open like a dead beast. The royal wolves formed a silent ring around the court, no longer obeying Ismeria's blood, no longer bowing to hidden murder. Selene stood beside Dorian, exhausted but upright. Her wrist still burned where the death thread had entered her. Her neck still ached from the blade. Her ruined eyes faced forward, pale, silver, and scarred, seeing nothing the court expected and everything the court feared. Dorian looked at Captain Vale. Take Ismeria and Odrin to the lower holding cells. No priest guards them. No noble visits them. No message leaves this court without witness. Ismeria smiled faintly. You think chains end blood? Dorian's voice was cold. No. They begin testimony. For the first time, Ismeria's smile failed. Odrin was dragged away trembling. Ismeria walked on her own, because pride was the last crown she could still wear. When she passed Selene, she leaned close enough for only her to hear. You have not won, Ismeria whispered. You have only made yourself necessary. That is another kind of cage. Selene did not flinch. Then I will keep the door open. Ismeria's breath changed once. Then the guards took her below. The court did not disperse. Dorian would not allow it. By his order, scribes began copying the names from the execution stone, the graves, the lower vault. and the hidden records. Servants were called not to clean the blood, but to witness what had been hidden beneath the floors they had scrubbed for years. Royal healers came to tend Selene, but she refused any hand that reached without asking. Dorian noticed. After the third healer stepped too quickly toward her burned wrist, his wolf shadow growled. Selene lifted one hand. I can answer for myself. Dorian's head turned toward her. Then he stepped back. Then answer, he said. The healer swallowed and asked permission properly. Only then did Selene allow her wrist to be wrapped. It was a small moment, but small moments were where old kingdoms either changed or lied about changing. When the court quieted, Dorian approached the execution stone again. There is one record still missing. Selene already knew. Her own. The death-seer line had been named. The murdered children had been named. The dead kings had been named. But the record of Selene's blinding remained incomplete. The stone had shown what happened, not why she survived. She touched the cold surface. The moon court disappeared. She was 7 again. Not blind yet. Small hands. Bare feet. A corridor outside the prince's nursery. Dorian asleep in his cradle. A strong little wolf shadow curled beside him. Ismeria placing the moonbone ring beneath his pillow. Odrin whispering that the pup shadow must be weakened before it chose against the queen line. Then little Selene gasped. Ismeria turned. The memory shifted to Moonfire. Fine. Hands holding her down. Odrin's voice saying, burned deep enough that she doubts every vision. Ismeria's ring glowing near her eyes. Then another voice. A woman's voice. Not all of it. Selene froze inside the memory. She had forgotten that voice. A temple servant had stepped from the darkness after Ismeria left. She had pressed something cold against Selene's bleeding eyes and whispered, hide the last sight where they will never look. The servant cut her own palm and placed blood against Selene's brow. Then the memory vanished. Selene Noctara. Dorian caught her only when she gripped his arm. What did you see? Selene touched the scarred skin around her eyes. They did not take all my sight, she whispered. Someone hid the last piece. The execution stone answered with one final image. A sealed moonwell beneath the old seer chapel, covered by black roots, and guarded by no living priest. Dorian's face hardened. We open it, Selene nodded. Not with the whole court. Ismeria will want panic. We take witnesses only. They went before moonrise. Dorian, Selene, Captain Vale, 2 scribes, and 3 royal wolves descended beneath the old seer chapel. The passage was narrow, wet, and lined with dead prayer candles. At the bottom lay the moonwell, a circle of black water reflecting no faces. Selene knelt at its edge. The water spoke her name. Not Selene Vale, Selene Noctara, last daughter of the death-seer house. The truth entered her like a blade and a blessing at once. Her family had not been merely temple-born. They had guarded the royal line before queens turned witness into threat. Their final gift was not prophecy alone, but murder sight. The power to see the hand behind the death, not just the death itself. Dorian crouched beside her. What does it ask? Selene listened. My blood, she said. And my choice. His voice tightened. Choice? If I take back the hidden sight, I will see more clearly. Murder, treason, death before it blooms. She swallowed. But I will never be able to pretend not to know. Dorian was silent. Then he said, You have been forced to carry truth your whole life. I will not ask you to carry more. Selene turned her blind face toward him. That was the cruelty of kindness. Sometimes it gave back the burden honestly. She thought of the children beneath the garden, the dead seers, the broken wolf, the throne built from hidden graves. She thought of Ismeria's whisper, necessary could become a cage. Then she placed her palm over the moonwell. I choose my sight, Selene said. Not for your throne, not for their fear. For the dead who were not believed. She cut her palm on the stone rim. Blood fell into the black water. The moonwell turned silver. Pain opened behind her eyes, vast and white. Selene gasped, but did not pull away. The hidden sight returned not as vision, not as ordinary seeing, but as truth shape. She saw Dorian beside her. A dark king with a wounded wolf and a crown. Shadow cracked open. She saw Captain Vale. Guilt, loyalty, regret. She saw the wolves, wary, grieving, alive. Then she saw the court above, and Ismeria's cell, empty. Selene's head snapped up. She escaped. Dorian rose instantly. How? Selene stared into the silver water. Ismeria moving through the old queen tunnels. Odrin bleeding behind her. A hidden blade in her hand. Not running away. Going to the royal nursery. Dorian went still. Selene's voice turned cold. She is going to kill the last heir child and blame me before the court can finish the record. Dorian's wolf shadow snarled. They ran. By the time they reached the upper palace, the moon had risen. Bells rang in panic. Guards shouted from the nursery wing. Nobles spilled from the moon court, terrified and confused. Ismeria stood at the nursery doors with a silver knife in one hand and a sleeping child in the other. Dorian's youngest cousin, the last unpoisoned child of the royal bloodline. Ismeria held the blade to the child's throat. Her eyes found Selene across the hall. Come closer, prophetess, she said. Let the court watch you bring death exactly where I said you would. The nobles turned. Fear returned to their faces. Selene understood. This was Ismeria's final strategy. Not escape. Reversal. Make Selene necessary, then make her terrifying. Put a child at her feet. Force blood. Blame prophecy. Dorian stepped forward, but Ismeria pressed the blade closer. No, my son, she said softly. Let your witness save him. The hallway froze. Selene heard the child's heartbeat. She heard Dorian's wolf preparing to lunge. She heard Ismeria's knife waiting for either movement. Then Selene removed the bandage from her burned wrist and stepped into the moonlight. No, she said. This time the death names the hand before it falls. Her silver eyes opened wider. The moonwell sight burned through her, and every shadow in the nursery hall pointed at Ismeria. Not one. All of them. The torches cast long black shapes across the stone floor. The guards' shadows, the nobles' shadows, Dorian's shadow, Selene's shadow, even the thin curtains moving beside the nursery windows. Every dark line bent toward the Queen Mother like an accusing hand. The court saw. The royal wolves saw. The child in Ismeria's arms stirred. Too young to understand that an old throne had placed a knife against his throat. Ismeria's expression did not break. That was the last terrible thing about her. Even exposed, even surrounded by witness, even with every shadow in the hall naming her hand, she still held herself like a queen. You see? She said softly. The blind prophetess brings death to the nursery. Selene stood in the moonlight with her burned wrist uncovered, her silver eyes open and glowing with moonwell sight. Pain trembled through her body, but her voice stayed clear. No. Death came here in your hand. Ismeria pressed the knife closer to the child's skin. Dorian's wolf shadow snarled, but Dorian did not move. His face was carved from restraint so sharp it looked like suffering. Mother, he said. Put him down. Ismeria's eyes flicked to him. You still call me that. For the last time, something in her face tightened, then vanished. Selene listened. The knife had a future. She could hear it. If Dorian lunged, the blade would fall. If a guard shot, the child would die. If a wolf attacked, Ismeria would twist behind the child's body and make prophecy look guilty. So Selene did not move toward her. She moved toward the wall. The nobles whispered as she placed her palm against the nursery mural. It showed the royal bloodline in silver paint. Kings, queens, heirs, wolves, cradle moons, beautiful lies dressed as history. Selene pressed her bleeding palm against the painted cradle. The moonwell sight opened. Show the child the hand, she whispered. The mural changed. Silver paint bled black. The court watched as Ismeria's hidden murders appeared across the nursery wall. The infant Prince Merone beneath the Queen's garden. The weakened wolf of young Dorian. The blind seers beneath Templestone. The rings. The black thread charms. The false prophecies. Then the mural shifted to the present. Ismeria holding the child, not to protect royal blood, but to use it as the final shield for her escape. The child saw it too. His small wolf shadow appeared on the floor, thin, young, barely formed. It looked at Ismeria, then it bit her shadow. Ismeria gasped. The knife lowered by a finger's width. Dorian moved only then, not to attack, to speak. "Little one," he said to the child, voice low and steady. "Come to your wolf." The child woke fully. His eyes opened. His wolf shadow tugged again, sinking its tiny teeth into the Queen Mother's shadow. The shadows pointing toward Ismeria tightened like chains. Selene understood. Not force. Witness. Even a child's wolf knew who held the blade. Ismeria felt the trap closing and raised the knife again. "I made this kingdom survive." Dorian stepped forward one pace. "You made it afraid." "Fear obeys." "No," Selene said. "Fear waits for a witness." The execution stone shard Captain Vale carried from the court flared in his hand. He threw it across the floor. It slid to Selene's feet, glowing black and silver. Selene knelt and placed her burned wrist upon it. All the shadows in the hallway darkened. Ismeria froze. For the first time, her hand shook. Selene spoke with the voice of the death-seer line behind her. "Queen Mother Ismeria Vare. Before witness. Before wolf. Before blood. Before the child whose throat you hold. Name your intention." Ismeria's mouth twisted. "I will not." The shard answered for her. "Murder." The words struck the hall like thunder. The child's wolf shadow tore free of Ismeria's shadow and pulled the child's body sideways with sudden strength. The knife slipped from his throat. Dorian moved. His wolf shadow reached Ismeria before his body did, striking her wrist and sending the silver blade spinning across the floor. Captain Vale caught the child. The royal wolves surged forward and formed a wall between Ismeria and every heir in the nursery. Dorian stopped before his mother. His sword was in his hand. Ismeria looked up at him from the floor, wrist bent, crown fallen, hair loose around her face for the first time. "Do it," she whispered. "Prove you are king." The hall went silent. Selene heard the trap. If Dorian killed her here, in rage, Ismeria would become what she had always wanted in the end. Royal blood spilled by royal blood. A martyr to those who feared witness more than murder. Dorian heard it too. His sword lowered. "No," he said. "You taught this kingdom to hide death behind necessity. I will not give you a clean ending." Ismeria's face went blank with hatred. Dorian turned to the guards. "Bind her for public trial." Captain Vale passed the child to a nurse, then locked ordinary iron around Ismeria's wrists. Not moonbone, not royal silver. Ordinary iron, like any murderer. The sight broke the last illusion. Nobles looked away. Servants did not. Selene rose slowly, the shard still glowing at her feet. Her body swayed. Dorian saw, but waited until she reached out. Only then did he take her hand. The nursery hall had become the final witness chamber. The Queen Mother had tried to turn prophecy into blame. Instead, death had named her before it fell. By sunrise, Ismeria stood in the moon court again. No crown, no throne, no wolf at her side. The child she had threatened sat safely with his nurses behind the royal wolves. Odrin knelt beside her in chains. The opened graves, the lower vault records, the broken ring, the nursery mural, and the execution stone all stood as witness. Dorian faced the court. "Ismeria Vare will live," he said. "She will name every queen, priest, noble house, guard, and record keeper who served the hidden graves. She will answer for every king poisoned, every child buried, every seer blinded, every wolf weakened, and every prophecy forged." A noble lord whispered, "And the throne?" Dorian looked at the shattered black throne. "It remains broken." The court stirred. He continued, "Until witness law is restored, no king of Verhold will sit above the execution stone. The stone will stand first, the crown second." Selene turned her face toward him. This was not a romantic vow. It was better. It was a change that could be tested. Dorian looked at her then, not as a condemned prophetess, not as a weapon, not as a holy symbol, but as the woman who had stood between death and his wolf because truth mattered more than fear. "Selene Vale," he said, "you are free to leave this court." The words cut through her more deeply than any command could have. Free. The court had never used that word for her. If you stay, he continued, it will not be as my seer, my absolution, my proof of innocence, or the mouth that must bleed whenever the throne is blind. You will choose when to speak. You will choose when to refuse. Selene's throat tightened. And if I say your court is wrong? Dorian's wolf shadow lowered its head. Then we listen before we defend it. Selene stood in the morning light, blind eyes silver and scarred, surrounded by the names of the dead who had finally been believed. I will stay, she said, until every hidden grave is opened, every false prophecy is burned, and no child is blinded because truth frightened a crown. Dorian bowed his head, not as king to subject, as witness to witness. And after? He asked quietly. Selene touched the scar at the back of her neck where the execution blade had kissed her skin. After, she said, you may ask me again. The royal wolves howled once beneath the dawn. Queen Mother Ismeria closed her eyes. And the execution stone, which had tasted royal blood for centuries, glowed clean for the first time. The public trial of Queen Mother Ismeria Vare began at moonrise, not from the throne but before the execution stone. Dorian refused to sit. That mattered more than any speech. For generations, every Alpha King of Varehold had judged from above while the accused knelt below, throat bent over black stone. Dorian stood on the same floor as the witnesses, the broken throne behind him still split open, its black heart exposed to the court like a wound that had finally stopped pretending to be law. Ismeria stood in ordinary iron chains. No silver crown. No moonbone rings. No royal wolf at her side. Only the names. They surrounded her now, carved in light across the execution stone. Murdered kings, poisoned heirs, blinded seers, buried children, silenced wolf, healers, servants who had carried messages and vanished before dawn. The stone no longer waited for blood. It waited for truth. High Priest Odrin spoke first. He did not speak from courage. He spoke because the witness stone burned every lie from his tongue before it could become sound. He named the Moonbone Workshop, where poison rings were carved. He named the priests who rewrote deaths as fever. He named the noble houses that sent their unwanted seer children to the temple and accepted silence in return. He named the queens before Ismeria, who had used prophecy as a blade and then called seers cursed for bleeding. Ismeria listened without lowering her head. When her turn came, she did not beg. She confessed like a ruler signing law. Yes, she said, voice clear beneath the moon. I ordered the deaths hidden. I ordered the seer line cut. I ordered the king's wolf weakened. I ordered the prince buried. I ordered the prophetess blinded. The court shook with whispers. Selene stood beside the execution stone, one hand resting on its edge. Her sight had not returned in the way people expected. She still could not see faces, colors, or dawn as others did, but the moonwell had given back the part of her vision that mattered most. She could see murder shape, lie shadow, the hand behind the wound, and Ismeria's shadow was full of graves. Dorian's voice was quiet. Why? Ismeria looked at her son. For one breath, something almost human passed across her face. Not remorse, not love, perhaps the memory of either. Then it was gone. Because kings die when wolves choose truth over blood, she said. Because seers make thrones kneel. Because mothers who do not control succession bury sons. The court went still. Dorian did not flinch. Selene felt the pain move through him, but he did not let it become command. His wolf shadow stood beside him, black and silver, wounded but alive. You were never protecting Varehold, Dorian said. You were protecting a throne that feared being seen. Ismeria's mouth tightened. The execution stone accepted the words. Its black surface changed. Slowly, the old execution channels the grooves where blood had once run filled with silver light. The stone was rewriting itself before the court. The carved blade marks faded. The old death runes broke open. Beneath them appeared older symbols. Witness. Refusal. Name. Memory. Selene understood before the priest did. This was never born as an execution stone, she said. The court turned to her. She ran her fingers across the glowing surface. It was a witness stone first. they turned it into a killing place when they grew tired of being answered. Dorian looked at the stone, then at every noble in the court. Then it returns to what it was. No one spoke against him, not because they agreed, because every royal wolf in the hall stood behind the stone. Dorian raised his voice. From this night forward, no prophetess, seer, wolf, healer, servant, child, or accused will be executed for speaking a death truth. No prophecy may be sealed by priest or crown without witness. No royal death may be recorded until the witness stone has heard it. The death-seer line is restored to name, protection, and refusal. Selene turned her face toward him at that final word. Refusal, Dorian continued. Selene Noctara will not belong to this throne. She will not be summoned like a weapon, punished like a curse, or praised into a prettier cage. If she stands beside this court, it will be by choice. If she refuses, the refusal will stand. The stone glowed brighter. Selene did not bow. She had bowed enough in her life. Bent enough. Kneeled enough. Bled enough. Instead, she placed her burned wrist on the witness stone. I will stand, she said. Until the hidden graves are opened, the false prophecies are burned, and every child born with death, sight learns that truth is not a crime. Her voice trembled only once, then steadied. But I will not be owned by the crown. I will not bleed on command. I will not soften truth to protect royal comfort. And if this court becomes another mouth for lies, I will name it. Dorian's wolf shadow lowered its head. So will I, Dorian said. The royal wolves answered with one low howl. Not loud, not victorious, solemn. Ismeria closed her eyes as if the sound pained her more than chains. Her sentence was not death. Selene demanded that before the court could call for blood, death would make the Queen Mother into a tragic ending for those who wanted the old world back. Witness would make her useful. Ismeria would remain alive under guard, stripped of title, forced to name every ring, every grave, every priest, every noble house, every hidden chamber, every child marked for blindness before the records could be destroyed. She would not be remembered as a mother betrayed by prophecy. She would be recorded as the queen of hidden graves. By dawn, the moon court was changed. The throne remained broken. The execution stone stood in front of it, renamed before all witnesses. Servants carried the first copied records into the lower halls. Scribes wrote the names of the dead on silver sheets. The queen's garden stayed open, its roses removed, its graves marked not as shame, but as proof. The nursery chapel was sealed until every child buried beneath it could be named. The lower prophecy vault was placed under guard chosen from seer families, royal wolves, and common witnesses, not priests alone. Selene walked through it all like someone moving after a storm that had not finished raining. Some nobles stepped aside from fear, some from respect. She did not care which. At the edge of the moon court, where dawn light touched the broken floor, Dorian found her standing alone beside the open doors. He did not approach too closely. You may leave today, he said. Selene almost smiled. You keep saying that, because no one said it when they should have. The answer quieted her. Beyond the doors, Verhold was waking. Bells rang slowly across the city. Not execution bells, not victory bells, but witness bells. A sound no one alive had heard before. Selene listened to them. I do not know how to be free here, she said. Dorian stood beside her, leaving space between them. Then learn badly at first. This time, she did smile. Small, tired, real. You are not good at comfort. No, at least you know. His mouth almost curved. For a moment, they stood without court, without prophecy, without death pressing a blade to anyone's throat. Just a blind prophetess with ruined silver eyes, and an Alpha King whose wolf had survived his own bloodline. Not lovers yet. Not healed. Not clean. But changed. Dorian looked toward the city. I will rebuild the court around witness. Selene turned her face toward him. You will fail sometimes. Yes, I will say so. I expect nothing less. His wolf shadow moved closer to hers, not touching, not claiming, simply standing near. Selene felt it like warmth at the edge of winter. After a long silence, Dorian said, And after the graves are opened? She touched the scar at the back of her neck where the execution blade had kissed her skin. "After the children are safe," she said. "After the seer names are restored. After your court proves it can hear truth without reaching for a blade." He waited. Only then did she finish. "Then you may ask me again." Dorian bowed his head, not as king to subject, but as witness to witness. Behind them, the stone that had tasted royal blood for centuries shone clean beneath the dawn. And for the first time in Verhold's history, the blind prophetess walked out of the moon court alive, unnamed by fear, unclaimed by the throne, and believed.